As humans, we have a long history of coming to terms with the concept of death. We do our best to cope with the loss of our loved ones, as well as with the anticipation of our own impending demise. Many of us turn to spiritual guidance to bring us comfort with stories relating to the idea of an afterlife. Death has mystified us through the ages and across many different cultures. This is probably why our video, What Happens When You Die, has been so immensely popular. It's only natural to wonder about what happens and whether some distant future will provide us with the technology to bring us back to life after we pass on. Recent research suggests that this may be sooner than we could have ever previously imagined. In April 2019, scientists wanted to test the extent that oxygen deprivation in the brain was irreparable. They wanted to find out if cells in a lifeless, intact brain could have some of their functions repaired. They probably didn't expect for their attempts to lead to any major breakthroughs. After all, how much can you really restore in a dead brain? But as it turned out, they were in for a huge surprise. An experiment was conducted on the brains of 32 pigs acquired by researchers at Yale University. The pigs were already dead when their brains were collected for experimentation, taken from a slaughterhouse that distributed their meat for consumption. The intact brains of the pigs had been without blood and stored in room temperature for 4 hours after death before the experiment began. A system known as BrainX was used to pump experimental solution into the brains, acting as an artificial blood circulation. The solution contained a chemical so that it would be more easily detectable when scientists later used an ultrasound to track the flow of it. After 6 hours of allowing the solution to transfuse through the pig's brains, researchers were stunned by what they found. It's like something out of a science fiction movie. The brains regained the ability to take in air and glucose, restoring oxygen to their tissues. There was also a shocking return of some synaptic activity between neurons as well as reduced cell deterioration. Clinically speaking, though, it couldn't be classified as a living brain. It was a cellularly active one. This floored the scientists who probably couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Researchers did not want to risk the brains regaining consciousness, so the solution that was used in transfusion contained chemicals intended to block nerve signals, just in case. Had any conscious activity been detected, the team planned on medicating the brains with anesthetic drugs and then freezing them immediately in order to shut down the process before it could go too far. Perhaps they were afraid of experiencing the horror of accidentally creating zombie pig brains. As interesting and creepy as it sounds to turn The Walking Dead or Frankenstein into potential foreseeable reality, the scientists more likely took this precaution due to the ethical concerns. After all, allowing consciousness in these brains, however unlikely that may be, would be undeniably cruel given their detachment from the bodies. Certainly, this would create quite a problem for the Board of Ethics. The pig brain study suggests that being alive or dead is not that simple, and that these two concepts are not as black and white as they may seem. There may not be a definitive line distinguishing the two, and there could be such a thing as being partly alive or partly dead. In essence, the study has opened the eyes to the possibility of a new way of being, and it's shown us that death can occur in stages, with some of our functions able to continue after other parts have long deteriorated. We tend to think that we're gone once we're declared clinically dead by a doctor. What is construed as clinically dead, however, does not hold consistent meaning and has undergone considerable changes throughout the years. Death used to be pronounced as certainty once the heart stopped beating. Later, the conceptualization of death turned to the brain, and we decided that official death could only be determined after this vital organ stopped functioning. But now, the findings from this research have given us a reason to challenge everything that we know, as the haunting evidence suggests that cellular activity can be restored in the brain after death. How can we now define true clinical death? With the advent of new knowledge comes more questions, and this is certainly true as it pertains to ethical considerations. As cited in Medical News Today, the study throws into question long-standing assumptions about what makes us alive. The newsletter also mentions that there may be limitations in future research regarding regulations for animals used in experiments. Determining that there may be some form of life after death creates confusion in what is considered harmful to creatures and how dead an organism needs to be before it can be used for testing. To say this is a small advancement in medical knowledge is a colossal understatement. The technology used to spread the experimental solution into the intact brains of the pigs has paved the way for finding new treatment methods for people who suffer from strokes, brain injuries, and diseases like Alzheimer's. The New York Times explains that this study may lead the way to a future consisting of fewer brain-dead patients and less need for organ donors. This is because if doctors can use something like BrainX to work more extensively on resuscitating their patients, there may be less need to harvest organs. So now we turn to the big questions. Do the results from the pig study mean that we've found a way to bring the dead back to life? Does this imply that zombies could be such a thing? Technically, but not entirely. There's no need to evacuate into your underground bunker just yet. Although scientists prepared to stop the brains if they did regain consciousness, there were no signs of budding intelligent activity during the study. Although active, the brains were not close to establishing awareness. Still, if even some cellular function can be brought back to life, this opens the avenue for other areas of research that could potentially lead to learning more about the mechanisms of the action that drive consciousness. Though this type of experiment has a long way to go before human trials can begin, we've already come a long way. Since the dawn of our existence, we've assumed that our bodies can only ever be in one of two different states. That is, either the state of being alive or the state of being dead. Once we're dead, that's it, lights out. There's no returning to life without a miracle or some form of divine intervention. This reality has long been presumed as an absolute truth, despite many of us wishing otherwise. But there are many supposed truths that have been debunked by science. Until the late 1990s, for instance, we thought that the expansion of the universe was slowing down. Since then, we've discovered the opposite, that the universe is expanding with increasing speed. We also used to think that humans as a species possessed more genes than simple organisms like amoebas. Thanks to the Human Genome Project in 2003, however, we've since learned that a tiny moss plant has more genes than us. Nothing is above inquisition. This includes the idea that we cannot be brought back to life once we're fully dead. It's probably not beyond the realm of possibility that we could eventually learn how to bring ourselves back to life, but we're just not quite there yet. Perhaps learning how to do this will bring us forward into a new step in our evolution. But the question is, would you actually want to be resurrected? Or would you rather just be left in peace? Though immortality sounds like it would be cool, being continuously resurrected every time you die and living forever while getting to see future advancements of mankind, it may not be all that great. You could get bored and fed up of your existence. Some elderly people report feeling ready to die because they've lived long enough. The longest living woman on record was Jeanne Clement, a French woman who lived a whopping 122 years and 164 days. Clement was born in 1875, just 10 years after the American Civil War ended. She was alive to witness the inventions of the light bulb, telephones, cars, televisions, and computers. She saw 3 American presidential assassinations, both world wars, as well as the emergence of the internet. Despite witnessing the progress of mankind, however, her longevity provided her with a lonely existence. Living so long was both a blessing and a curse, as she outlived her husband, her daughter, and even her grandson. With no remaining relatives, she made a deal with a lawyer that he could inherit her house after she died if he paid her 2,500 francs per month. She outlived him too. Seeing so many people and things come and go, she was ready when she finally passed in 1997. She once stated, "I wait for death and journalists," poking fun of the fame she earned for living so long. After enduring such a lengthy existence, we don't imagine she'd be very happy if some scientist suddenly came out of nowhere from the future and reanimated her consciousness. She might say something like, I thought I was done. Why do you have to bring me back?" Thus, we suggest you think carefully before deciding that you want to come back to life if it ever becomes a choice. So, just for fun, let's return to the question of the impending zombie apocalypse. Since the pig study only suggests the resurrection of some cellular function, even if there were zombies derived from this, they probably wouldn't be able to consciously think. At most, maybe they'd have restored their motor functions like Mike, the famous headless chicken. We imagine that any reanimated human corpses would just continually walk into a wall with no concept of direction. For this reason, an outbreak of zombies would probably be very easy to defeat while posing no real threat to human civilization. We do, however, have a certain type of zombie in existence now. There's something known as walking corpse syndrome or Cotard syndrome, a rare condition where people believe they're dead. Their delusion may cause them to think that they're missing body parts or have lost their soul. There was a case of a 53-year-old Filipino woman with Cotard syndrome who believed that she smelled like rotting fish. She requested to be brought to the morgue so that she could be amongst her own kind. She was given antipsychotics and antidepressants to treat her condition, which improved her symptoms. Cotard syndrome was first described in 1882 by Dr. Jules Cotard as being a condition with which patients find it difficult to deal with their external reality. Though this isn't quite as dramatic as the zombies who have an appetite for brains in television and movies, it's still creepy to wonder what life would be like if everyone suddenly came down with this condition, sluggishly meandering around city streets thinking that they're dead. So, what do you think of the results of the recent 2019 pig study? Will we ever be able to bring the dead back to life? Would you want to be brought back to life after you die? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video, What Happens When You Die. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.